Her topic is,
This meeting is being recorded.
I believe it's called the journey home, moving from disconnection to connection. So you take it, Sarah, and run with it. It's all you. Oh, and I want to say one more thing. For those of you that are attending, please use the Q&A box. In the last 10 minutes of our presentation, we're going to open it up, and Eric and I are going to probably read off some of those questions, and Sarah will answer. And then also, please feel free to go to the chat to put any information about yourself that you'd like for us to have. Thank you.
All righty. I'm going to figure out how to share my screen so I can share some more.
While you're getting queued up here, we are recording this, and this will be posted on our website, and it's also going to be viewed on Facebook Live. So if you want to share this with your colleagues, you could use our website or Facebook.
All right, give me a moment. This takes a second. Okay. How's it looking?
Looks great.
How's it looking?
Perfect.
All right. So I'll be talking about the journey of coming home, moving from disconnection to connection. My practice, home body counseling, it was completely virtual, but starting this month, I actually got a lease in Montrose. So this is the address of there. This is my website. And to share a little bit more information about me, I did have a slide so that I can stay focused, but I'm a trauma and relational therapist. Essentially what that means is I like to focus on how trauma gets stuck in the body, how that might be creating dysregulation, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the therapies that I use for that. As far as relational, I really love looking at how past relationships may be interfering or creating issues and current relational issues for my clients. And so really oftentimes we're delving into kind of how the past is maybe playing into current things. And I am passionate about all things connection. What I mean by that is the way I named my practice, I really did it with the intention of connection. And so each of the words means something to me. So with home, that means us coming back home to ourselves, the essence of who we are, the things that we value, our passions, our desires. So really helping people reconnect with that. And then, of course, with trauma, it resides in our bodies. So I'm really using body-based practices to help clients reintegrate and reprocess things that have happened to them. So really helping them reconnect with their body. So there's the home body. And then counseling brings in the aspect of the therapeutic relationship that they have with me, and how we can co-regulate. Often clients are coming to me with difficulty regulating. And so we can use the therapeutic relationship as a way of co-regulating and as a way of practicing relational things. So that's where the name of my practice started. And these are some of the therapies that I use: somatic experiencing, brain spotting, EMDR for short, but that's eye movement, and desensitization and reprocessing therapy. I also like to help with codependency using a lot of PLLC's work. And so I encourage you, if you're not familiar with these, to research them. There's a lot of information online about these types of therapies. And just little random things, just so you kind of know me a little bit. I am a Texas native, specifically the Woodlands, if you're familiar of that little sub north of Houston. I am a cat and dog lover. I have a cat and dog named Lily and Lola. And soccer is a big part of my life. Played it my whole life, and I still play. So just wanted to touch a little points that may make me a little more relatable or not. But yeah, so we can start going into what we're going to be doing today. This is kind of the structure of what we'll be covering today. I recently, over the last couple of years, got really familiar with this relational cultural theory, and I'll go a little bit more into that just as the lens for the presentation today, as well as we'll get into defining what connection and disconnection are, what disconnection might look like internally, externally. And then I want to offer some choice points for creating connection. I'm excited about sharing these with you guys. And then if we have time, depending on how long this takes, I have like an experiential activity I'd like to provide to kind of interweave some of the stuff I shared. And then of course we'll have time for Q&A. And so just to touch a little bit on relational cultural theory, I'm not going to go too in depth, and I did provide a resource if you want to look more into it, but it was developed by a group of women during the feminist movement in psychology in the 1970s. And the focus was originally on women and the systematic power differentials, how that was creating disconnection within their relationships. And so they're really focused on highlighting the importance of growth fostering relationships and how it's important for a healthy coexistence, and that relationships are central to our lives, not necessarily like secondary or peripheral. And I'll get more into that as well, but they really highlight how connection really helps us grow and how we like naturally and from like a neuroscience place move towards connection throughout our life. So that's kind of like the lens that I'll be kind of looking through and educating you guys through. And then, so just a little bit more, we are actually wired to connect. It's in our neurobiology. And so on a physiological level, we need people. And so that's something that I want to like help destigmatize and know that that's okay. And so if you like to get nerdy, I really like neuroscience. And again, I'm not going to get too in depth, but I did put links or, and at the end there is a resource page, but just, I think it's so beautiful how our bodies are actually hardwired to help us engage in satisfying connection with other people. And that, you know, when we are cut off from others, these neural pathways in our bodies do suffer. And so an example of that is our vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is one of our 10 cranial nerves that goes from the base of our skull all the way down into our gut. And it innervates all of the organs and things that go down. But what the vagus nerve does and what makes it so smart is that it has the power to tell our stress response to shut down if it doesn't need to be activated. And so it kind of acts as like a brake, right? So that when we are in relationship with people, and that if they are actually like safe and trusting people, that we're not going into a fight or flight response. And that so when it's working well, it actually helps us feel calm. And that's why, like, for example, when you're in relationships with people that you trust, that's why you feel calm. That's how you know your vagus nerve is working. But on the other hand, if it's not working very well, it can actually misfire, and all relationships may actually feel threatening to us, even though logically we may know this person is like really like safe and helpful and has my best interest. Our bodies may be having a whole other reaction and not working. And so that's where I would recommend focusing on finding activities to stimulate that vagus nerve to really improve the tone of it so that it can work in the way that it needs to. And so the last thing I would say is our relationships do sculpt our brains. So like the people that we're around do have an effect on our brain and our bodies. So just something to consider. And then belonging is like a biological imperative of all human beings. And Brene Brown really touches this a lot in her Atlas of the Heart book. So again, another good resource if you want to learn more about this. But when you think of, if you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like love and belonging are on like I think it's like the third of the hierarchy before we can actually even move towards self-actualization. So we actually need love and belonging with other people before we can really achieve being our highest, best self. And so a sense of belonging and community are essential for our well-being, as well as it can be seen as a spiritual practice to really be able to be in relationships and be your most authentic self and feel like you're part of something bigger. All right. This is the last slide before we get into defining the connection, disconnection. I just thought this was kind of alarming that like a lot of the research, and there's a meta-analysis that was performed where they really highlight that loneliness is a significant health threat. And so this statistic here like really I thought like stood out, that it can increase our odds of dying by 45%. So it really shows how distressing this is on our bodies to feel lonely, right? And it can create other risk factors for like disease and depression, anxiety, things of that nature. So just thought that was something that stood out, and you know, that loneliness can actually, you know, be a warning sign for us that we need to connect. So I just wanted to share that. All right. So before I get into here, this is a great time for me to take a breath, because with presenting, it creates nerves. And so just want to take a moment to pause. All right. And so defining connection. So this is just to like spark your brain on kind of like what is out there as far as defining connection. But you know, this is the dictionary's version of defining it. This is Brene Brown. You may have a different way, but I really liked the way that Brene Brown described connection. Is that this energy that exists between people when they feel seen, when they feel heard, when they feel valued, when they can give and receive without judgment. I hear that a lot with clients, that they fear being judged. And so, and also like that growth fostering relationship thing, that piece that I mentioned earlier, is that when we're in relationship, we feel like we're gaining growth and strength from a relationship, that it can be this mutual connection. So just kind of giving you some ideas of defining connection, but ultimately, I think it's important that we think critically about what this means for us and in our lives. And so if you haven't noticed already, there's going to be a lot of cat pictures. I thought this cat picture was the best thing ever. And so just want you guys to think about, like, when it comes to connection, what are you trying to achieve or feel? What are you wanting to move towards? And so this would be a good moment, like, just if you're open to it, to maybe like jot a couple things down. I know I did this for myself. Because when I ask people to do stuff, I also like to make sure I do it first, right? So I'll just share a couple, like feeling emotions and thoughts with clarity, feeling presence with God, relating with others, and being myself. So that's what it may mean to me. We know what it means to the dictionary and Brene Brown, but really just thinking about, like, what does this mean for me? And so, yeah, just think it's important to think about those things. I created this image because of the world that we live in. I think the pull towards disconnection, it can feel like strong sometimes, and that it's very accessible. Like, we live in a very like distracted world. And so, like, I feel like disconnection, sometimes it's like, as much as I want connection, the pull towards disconnection sometimes feels stronger. So I feel like I'm kind of in this tension between, I want to connect, and yet there's also this drive to, like, well, that's scary. Maybe I'll just disconnect instead. And so just wanted to highlight that. And as much as we're wired to connect, we're also wired to, like, survive and avoid pain and things like that. So just that tension makes sense in that way. And I thought this image could be a helpful way of looking at that. Alrighty. And so here we'll move into defining disconnection. Again, I gave the dictionary definition, as well as a definition from Judith Jordan. She's one of the pioneers with the relational cultural theory. And so she defines disconnection as when we have relationships where there's not mutual empathy, there's not mutual empowerment, where we usually feel disappointed, misunderstood, like maybe we feel a sense of danger, there's boundary violations, right? There may be a felt sense of this power differential. And so that's where she sees disconnection happening. So again, just like previously, wanting you to think about what disconnection means to you whenever you are feeling disconnected. Like, what do you notice feeling? What do you notice maybe believing about yourself, about others, about the world when you are in this space? So again, just taking a moment to maybe jot a couple things down. I also, as I'm sharing, and I don't know if they're able to comment, I probably won't be able to see it anyway, but if you guys want to share things in the chat about what connection means to you, what disconnection means to you, I think that those would be a gift to other people, because maybe they also feel that way. So if you decide to share something, yeah, put in the chat. I'd be curious to see what it means to you, because like I said, what disconnection means to me may be different than what it means to you. So now we're going to move into looking at what and how disconnection can show up. I think before, the reason I bring the slide up is like acknowledging is kind of the first step, right? If we're able to recognize and name and understand what disconnection looks like for us, it gives us awareness of the choice points that we can take, right? So to know means that we can create steps towards trying to define connection. And so it's like, I miss me. That's how I see that. So that's our first step on the journey home. Alrighty. And so I'm not going to read all these bullet points. These are things that I've seen in my work with clients. And because we're holistic beings, I kind of separated it out in this way. That's not to say that some of these may overlap as far as the things that are named. So just wanted to give you a list of different things. And because we are holistic beings, usually if we're disconnected in one area, it's likely affecting another. And so I kind of wanted to walk you through what that could look like. I don't know if you guys can see this pointer, but an example of that, we start like emotionally. So if when we're in a relationship with somebody, it can be friendship, romantic, whatever. But if we're withholding emotionally what we're feeling to make sure that the other person is okay, we don't get to be truly with the experience of what's going on for us. So if we're withholding, the other person's not going to know what's going on. So if you think of socially, we may have difficulty relating to this person and difficulty feeling understood. And usually when we're feeling that, it's going to have some kind of physical effect on our bodies, whether we are aware of it or not. And if there's an accumulation of stress over time, that can lead to like pain and illness. If it's so overwhelming, we may feel numb. And so just kind of seeing how already this trajectory can happen. And then, if we're not really, if we're feeling a lot of pain and stress, we may have a difficulty being present, right? Because there's just a lot of focus on what's happening here. Or we just may want to disconnect because what we're feeling is too much. And so difficulty being present can happen. We may not have a felt sense of interconnection with other people in our shared humanity, because when we're feeling these things, we may isolate, right? And so just kind of wanted to share an example of how that can all kind of play in. And when you work, the great thing is that when you start working on one in a healthy, functional way, it can start. So just wanted to share kind of like the interweave and how those can affect one another. There's also internal signs of disconnection, and I got this from the recent book that Dima Bryant published called Homecoming. If you're really wanting to come back home to yourselves or feel more connected, this is a wonderful, wonderful book. And so she shared some of these different internal signs of disconnection, and I'm just going to touch on a couple of them. So like with boredom might be a warning sign for you that you're not really aligned with the things that you value, the things that you desire, maybe your passions, or that you're not really cultivating joy in your life. And then kind of in the same vein, inability to experience joy. So I see this a lot of times with clients where because of maybe their history, they were so used to being hypervigilant and like always preparing for the next thing that really served them as a child to be in that state. But as an adult, whenever like really great things are happening in their lives, they have a hard time staying in it and savoring it because they're just waiting for the next shoe to drop, right, as it was then. So trying to help them see that like the threat's no longer there, and that they have a right to experience joy and to move into that. As far as like with envy, you know, I've heard the saying like comparison is the stealer of joy. And so when we're comparing ourselves to other people, we're already disconnecting from ourselves and putting ourselves in a less than place or looking from a place of lack. And so these are just some examples of what internal signs of disconnection look like. And again, I encourage you, like if you want to know more about each of these, to get that book, or listen. She has a podcast too where she talks about these things as well. And then there's also external signs of disconnection. And so with external, this is more behavioral. Internal is more of what we feel on the inside. So external, this more looks like behaviors. And so busyness is a common one where we are filling every minute of our time with something. And oftentimes busyness can be reinforced in our culture, right? Because it's like, oh, you're so productive and you're always social and doing all these things, right? Which is not to say like busyness is good, bad, or right or wrong, but just to kind of evaluate your busyness. And is that a way that you're trying to avoid being with reality or avoid being with some of these difficult feelings or things that you're experiencing? And then kind of in the same vein, dysfunctional distraction. There can be healthy distraction. It's just kind of, again, what's the intent around distraction? Are you, right? Dysfunctional distraction looks more like I'm numbing out. I'm like constantly sleeping because I don't want to deal with reality. Addiction can look like that as well. And then when it comes to like unhealthy relationships, if a way to know that we're disconnected from ourselves is if we're in relationships that are really dishonoring us and where we're really not being valued, or there's not a mutual give and take in the relationship. So sometimes we stay in unhealthy relationships longer than we need to, and that could be a sign of disconnection. And then people pleasing. I've often heard that as like self-neglect or self-abandonment, because what we end up doing with people pleasing is that we are basically putting other people first. We are not really being true with like, maybe we wanted to say no, or maybe we were really feeling something else. And yet we're just moving towards people to make sure that they're okay. So we end up kind of at the expense of other people dysregulating ourselves to make sure that they're okay. So again, that can again be another form of disconnection. Self-sabotage, I often see those are the attempts of like our, like when I think back to like experiences that when I explored childhood with people and they had to adapt in certain ways in order to survive. A lot of times those same adaptations are what look like self-sabotage in the adult today. So maybe in childhood they had to like get small, or they didn't move towards things that they wanted because that wasn't encouraged. And so as adults, they may still be engaging in that. And so I try to see that in like a loving way, and just to honor that, yeah, that helped you at one time, but it no longer serves you now. So, alrighty. So you may be wondering, as you looked at all these ways of disconnection and how they show up, why that's showing up for you. And oftentimes we're disconnected because the pressure and stress and demands of life are really maybe not making time to slow down and really be with what's going on with us. a lot of times I hear that often. It's like, well, I have no time to do this and that and the other, and we're burned out. So that may be a way we're disconnected. Another can be that maybe we weren't raised in a family that like modeled healthy ways of showing emotion or being with them. Or maybe certain emotions were like deemed as bad and others were good. And so sometimes we are raised in homes that encourage us to dismiss feelings. I think disconnection, kind of touching back earlier on that slide with the tug of war kind of thing, is like disconnection can be kind of normalized in our society. I all too often when I go to like public places and I just see a group of people and they're all on their phones, but people aren't really questioning. Kind of like, I don't know, to me, it just seems kind of weird. I'm like, we're here to connect and yet we're disconnected. And so sometimes in these situations, it's a little normalized. We might be disconnected because our nervous system is dysregulated. Trauma is often held in our bodies. And so oftentimes it can get us stuck in these places of like, maybe we're stuck in fight or flight, right? Or maybe we get stuck in shutdown, we're frozen. So if we're stuck in these places, we're in the space of being wired to survive versus wired to connect. And so this is where I would encourage you to work on creating some rhythm of regulation in your nervous system. Addiction can be another way that we are disconnected, because with addiction, we're so focused on that we're not really focused on ourselves and other people, that really becomes kind of the main focal point. So we can become disconnected in that way. And then without kind of, like I've talked before, trauma is held in the body, and that can also lead to all sorts of disconnection. So these are some of the ways. This is not an all-inclusive list, of course, but just some things to be thinking about. All right, so again, another pause so I can take a breath as well as a drink of water. But I just want you to take a moment to maybe write down some of the ways that maybe resonated with you in the slides around how disconnection may be showing up in your life currently. So as you're doing that, I'm going to take a breath, drink. So, I don't realize how much talking like makes you parched. So, all right. And so now we're going to move into the journey of coming home. So this is just how I view it. Doesn't mean it's good, bad, right, or wrong. But I really think it comes down to us loving ourselves, loving other people, and loving beyond. And love can look like creating connection. So creating connection with yourself, creating connection with others, and creating connection with the world and beyond, and spiritually. And so I'm excited. I'm going to share some choice points for how you can do that. And so reparenting is something that I harp on with my clients. And this looks like giving yourself what you didn't receive as a child. So you may have wanted some emotional, physical nurturing, or maybe you wanted to be affirmed, or given education around certain things, or even protected with like healthy boundaries. Maybe you just wanted to be seen. So these are some of the areas that often come up. And a choice point is writing a love letter to yourself. So you might imagine maybe a time period in your life where you were having a difficult time. There may be like a specific
Meeting is being recorded.
There may be a specific time period that stands out to you, or age. And so you just imagine that you can go back to that younger self and give them what they needed, the love or care that they wanted at that time. So it's just an example. You can write a letter, or you might just do a visual. And so it really acknowledging and interacting with your inner child, or these younger wounded parts, can be an extremely powerful way of connecting with yourself. All right. This one's huge. Another huge one in my work is increasing body awareness. All too often we stay in our head. I'll be asking clients kind of like how they feel, and they tell me how they think. And so as much as our body, right? Our body keeps the score. Also a wonderful book if you haven't read that, Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. As much as it keeps the score, it also has the innate ability to heal. So it has that duality. And so one of the ways to help increase body awareness is tapping into your felt sense. And so the felt sense is not, it's not mental, it's a physical awareness of like what is going on internally. And so just helping you not, because sorry, I'm going off for a second. When we stay in our head, that's a way of disconnecting. So really it's helping us tap back in with like what is going on. Because often I'll have clients come in and they tell me they're feeling something. They're like, oh, I'm feeling good when they check in. And I'm like, well, how do you know that? And so it really has to have, it's really a moment for them to slow down and check in with their felt sense. And so our emotions, they do make themselves heard through physical sensation. So learning the language of sensation and knowing our body wants to share wisdom and different things with us can be very valuable. So these are just a couple different ways. Grounding with your 5 senses, noticing what you see, hear, taste, touch, smell is a way to do that, as well as noticing like the nuances of sensation. So with somatic experiencing, I'm really having people describe the characteristics of sensation, like what's the color, the shape, the texture, is there a direction, kind of looking at the edges of it, where does it end and you begin. So really helping them find the nuances to be with that. And then I love this, if that sensation could speak, what might it say? I find that to be a very powerful question in my work. And then kind of tapping back into combating loneliness, since it is a painful experience to our bodies. Just wanted to normalize that feeling lonely is normal. It's a normal human experience. We often shame ourselves or like hide this part of us that feels this way when it's very normal. And so in the Wired to Connect book, they talk about positive relational moments. And what this can do is it helps you connect with like a past, because our body has a body memory of a previous relational moment. It helps us tap into that as a way to manage the distress of loneliness. And it also can help alter maybe some of these old neural pathways that aren't serving us anymore. And if you don't have positive relational moments, this is something I would encourage you to maybe like seek out and see if you can create with a friend or a family member or a romantic partner. And so an example is, remember a time you felt safe or happy in another person's presence, and really allow yourself to experience the pleasant sensations that arise. So again, coming back to that felt sense. And this is a picture of my dogs. That's Lola and Gunner. So makes me happy to see them. All righty. And then co-regulation is a wonderful technique for feeling more connected with other people, but it also helps create regulation in our nervous system. So what co-regulation is essentially is the interplay between our nervous systems with another person. And the cool thing with that is because our bodies have these wonderful mirror neurons that say you're in relationship with another person who is a lot more regulated and we're not. Our brains and bodies will naturally literally mirror the calmness of the other person. And kind of to give a little bit more about like the mirror neurons, if you've ever been talking to someone for a period of time, you may notice that after a while you guys are kind of doing the same pose. And so that's essentially like an example of our mirror neurons. And so we can also create that with other people. And this is what makes the therapeutic relationship really important, as well as like when you're looking for a therapist, hoping that they have a very regulated nervous system, because you may be coming into that session super dysregulated and they can use their nervous system to help co-regulate you. So that's also a really wonderful part of therapy too. And this plays into our vagus nerve too. right? Because with meditation, this relational mindfulness exercise is bringing in the benefits of meditation while being in a relationship with another person to co-regulate. So this is just an example of a relational mindfulness exercise. I remember the first time I did it, it was awkward and uncomfortable. So I just want to normalize that. But as you kind of like allow yourself to be in it a little bit longer, it will naturally do the things that it needs to create calm and slow down your breath and really help you connect with the other person. So yeah, you begin by matching your breath with the other person. You're sitting across from them, eyes open. And of course, like if eye contact is weird or uncomfortable, you can look away and look and come back. And so you just want to meditate and visualize love while sitting across from the other person and notice that felt sense in your body. And so this is also the picture I share is, as Kim stated, I got married recently. And this is a positive relational moment for me and something I could visualize while I'm doing the exercise. Right now I'm like smiling, even just like looking at the picture, because yeah, it's just it was a really happy day. So, and as I look at that, I can notice like the feelings that I start feeling in my body. Like I notice it feeling warm, I notice I'm smiling. And so you guys can use pictures as well. Like another thing that the book recommended is like creating a like album of smiling faces. And so you may, like when you're having a hard time or you're feeling alone, have an album on your phone where you are just going through pictures of people that you love and they're smiling, you're having a good time. And that can actually boost some of those like happy, calm feelings in your body. Alrighty. Mindfulness. So mindfulness is an intentional approach to living in the present, moment by moment without judgment. Recently heard this term unabridged noticing by a teaching pastor at Livesay, Sean Palmer. And I just really love that term because when you think of like the unabridged version of like movies, it's like the full thing. It's not cut. There's nothing getting in the way. And he was talking about how often like we want to capture everything. Like when we go places, like we want to capture everything on our phones and like how that really interferes with us, like just really being present and being in the moment. And so mindfulness can be a really wonderful way of connecting spiritually, connecting with nature, using going outside as a spiritual practice is a choice point, right? We may be present with the possibility of discovering something from God or whatever you view God as, whether it's the universe, your higher power, whatever it means to you. I just put God as to be concise on the PowerPoint, but as we slow down, we really can create stillness. And in that stillness, there's a lot of stuff that can come from within and just awareness and connection. And so I think this is like a hopefully easier one to use, maybe not so much here in Houston with the heat, but just being a little more intentional the next time you go outside and really seeing how you feel as you do that. And then this is the last choice point for spirituality. So generosity and hospitality. And what I mean by this is really being able to share our resources, time, energy, money, whatever, with others without the expectation of something in return. I think volunteering is a really wonderful choice point because you can be intentional with seeking out a local organization. It doesn't have to necessarily be local, but with something that like you're passionate about, like maybe it's mental health, like me, or maybe it's homelessness, or I mean, there's many things, right? But volunteering can be a wonderful way to cultivate wellness and justice and empowerment in the world. And it's a way to tap into the interconnectedness that we share with others and humanity. I think oftentimes we see spirituality as like only an internal thing, but it also can be through that internal connectedness and spirituality that we act, right? That internal spirituality can then be a spiritual act. so that it can become external through these ways. So I thought that was a cool choice point. So just kind of to wrap everything up, and healthy relationships can create healthy bodies, that those two can interplay, and the opposite can also be true, right? And just another thing to highlight is that loneliness is very dysregulating to our bodies, and again, seeing it as a warning sign that we need to move towards connection, right? Can I reach out to somebody? Or if I can't, maybe using one of the positive relational moments and things of that nature. I just want to like name that it's okay that we need people. We are wired to connect. We're wired to be in relationship and in community. And that's really what helps us have a better well-being. Just a little bit about this picture. I went to Professionals Day recently and we got to ride the horses. It was the best thing ever. But equine therapy is also a good choice point. We will naturally co-regulate with the horses. So kind of to tap back into the co-regulation. They also can really help with us getting an idea of like what our attachment style is. So, I mean, there's so much more. But I was really grateful of that opportunity. All right, so for the last 5 minutes, I wanted to do an experiential activity with you guys. So you don't really need much. You just need a piece of paper, something you can write with, and an open heart. And so before we move into that, I'll just encourage you to take a couple breaths so you can really just kind of transition into this activity. And so I can model that if that feels good, but I'm just gonna, on my own here, take 3 deeper breaths just to kind of ground and come into the space. If you need to take a couple more, that's okay too. But coming back to what we've been talking about, when you think of connection, what image comes to mind? So really, as you tap into what connection means to you, see if there's an image that comes to mind for you. And it could maybe be the image of a person, of a place, of maybe it's a thing. It can be whatever. And as that image comes to mind, I'll encourage you just to draw it. And again, this is not about being an artist. This is about the process. So creating some kind of representation of that on your piece of paper, whatever that means for you. Once you feel like gotten to a good place with the drawing, and you can still continue drawing if you need to, I encourage you to just sit with and look at the drawing. And as you're looking at what you've drawn and the image that comes to mind, just really notice if any sensations or emotions or certain thoughts come to mind. If you can, really being with the physical sensation, right? Is there any expansion that happens? Any change in temperature? Is there a color that comes to mind? Is there a direction to the sensation? Is it maybe in a certain part of your body? So really just kind of noticing the nuances and characteristics of the sensation that comes up or the emotion that comes up. And if at any time this exercise becomes uncomfortable, you can just opt out, ground in the space. Find what feels good for you. If there are pleasant sensations, just see if you can savor that. For the last minute, just if you want to jot a couple of things down, maybe journal what you notice or what this experience was like for you. You're welcome to do that. And if you want to share anything in the chat, you can do that as well. The wonderful thing with this is you can use this as a resource moving forward, right? Maybe if you notice you're feeling a little distressed or dysregulated or maybe lonely, coming back to this and really feeling into this as what it means for you to have connection. Or it may be something that motivates you to move towards seeking out connection. But just wanted to share this opportunity with you guys. I appreciate you listening. Also, if there's additional questions beyond today, you can email me here at sarah@homebodycounseling.com. I appreciate you guys listening and for letting me be present. I'm going to stop sharing. And again, I said I can share the PowerPoint with people. I don't mind that at all. Here's some other resources.
That'd be great. I know a few people have asked, and if you could email that to me or turn it into a PDF, we could post it on our website at spiritualcarenet.org. So,
Yeah, for sure. It's very easy to get that going.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I feel like very relaxed. I think that you have a very relaxing voice.
I agree.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm glad I participated. That was really awesome. I'm looking to see about Q&A questions we might have. And this one's probably for Eric. Are there CEUs? Eric, answer that and tell them how.
Good question. Yes. Brooke, our vice president, has created a link for an evaluation. And then at the end, you could print off your certificate. You'll get that at the end of this and also tomorrow in an email that we'll send out automatically. If something happens and you don't get that, or for some reason technology won't let you print off the certificate, just email me and I'll be glad to email that back to you. So yes,
That's awesome.
we'll get that certificate.
All right. I have one question right here. Well, it's actually a comment. We have a few comments. I like the animal photos and connection with you. That's from Ann Worth. And then she was asking if slides will be available. And so, yes, we will get those available for you guys. And now I clear this one off. Let's see. I took some notes too. I loved the suggestion of generosity in order to establish connection. I loved that. I think that I find that to be really true and very, you know, I'm an LCDC, so I work with lots of folks with a substance use disorder. And to me, that is, it's kind of symbolic of a step 12, which is critical. If someone is working a 12-step program, that the giving back, but especially the giving back and not expecting anything in return, which is a new trick for some of us, you know, can be so rewarding, and it just gives such a sense of connectedness to to other people, whether they're people that are struggling, if you're actually doing 12-step work, or just connecting to, you know, a family member or a friend that is in need of something, even if it's just someone to listen to. So that was awesome. I did have one question, and it may lead to another one, but it was a little more EMDR related, and it was from Mary Angeli Fortuno. I may be saying that wrong. When do we know a client is ready for EMDR to process trauma? And then there's a second part. If they are still struggling with accepting the trauma, should it be done gradually?
Yeah, so with, I think with any of, well, especially EMDR, the resourcing piece is so important. So like noticing, like, as you're doing different, like trying to create resources with them, like creating maybe, because like with EMDR, there's like the safe, calm place. I don't know if am I still here? Or did I?
Oh yeah.
You're good.
Oftentimes my gauge, so I'll just talk personally. If I'm doing like a safe, calm place with them, or trying to create resources with them, and they're getting activated, that it, rather than it being they're getting calmer, because with resources, you know, the goal is so that they're getting calmer, the distress is going down. So if I'm trying to create resources with them and things to help them actually be calm, and they're having the opposite effect, that may be an indication of like we need to slow down and keep staying in the resourcing phase for a while before going into trauma related material. Because what we want to help build their capacity to be with activation and to stretch out their window of tolerance, so that when they do go into these experiences, they're not going way too over, right? Because we don't want to like kind of we don't want to re-traumatize them. So I think for me personally, gauging the resourcing phase is always an indication of like, okay, maybe it's not time to move forward yet. We need to actually stay in this resourcing space, because safety is so important. If they don't have a felt sense of safety in their body, it's really hard to move towards healing. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's really kind of like my gauge, is like, how are they responding just right now, and really getting a feel of their nervous system from like day one.
Okay.
And then what was the other question? I don't remember.
I just want to throw out that I know a lot of treatment programs like Starlite, we do EMDR, or we start the process, because, you know, especially when there's a lot of trauma and you're taking away their coping mechanism, then it's a delicate process to get that right. And EMDR definitely does help, but it's an ongoing process even after we discharge them. So we look for therapists in the you know, area that they're going back to continue that. So yeah.
Yeah. That does lead me to a question. It's kind of controversial, but it does come up a lot. And that is, if you do have someone that is a substance use disorder primary, and they're going to residential treatment for 30 days, right? Do we start the EMDR during that time? I mean, and I know how I feel just from situations that have come up with me and that I've participated in. But there is a lot of different answers to that. Do you have any input on that, personal input or experience with that? And what would your suggestion be? First, is that safe? Is that okay? Or are we going to maybe start the process and then encourage them to seek that out during the continued care process, once discharged?
Yeah, my gut reaction to that is like stability is like the first and foremost thing that they need. And so really like allowing that time period when they're in treatment to be about stabilization and giving them skills. Like, again, it's like that resourcing, because I guess my fear would be that you're gonna activate them and they don't have what they had before. Like they can't run to the substance that was helping cope with that. And so really like building them up, building a foundation, I think is important before. For me personally, I wouldn't move into EMDR yet, but that's just how I work as a trauma therapist. I'm just really, and knowing like what's in the background, right? Because like if you're not aware of their trauma history, then you could be delving into something and it's just
Right.
a lot of other stuff. So I think depending how long the treatment is, and maybe they're already pretty well resourced. Maybe this isn't their first time in treatment, and maybe they've been in therapy for a long time and actually do have a lot of resources in place, and they can move towards that. So again, I think it's individual. I think that, you know, if some of those things are already in place, then maybe it would be okay to do the EMDR. But that
Right.
kind of, I'm gauging like, where's their nervous system at? What are the resources that they have in place? Because I don't want to, in doing the processing, overactivate them, and then they're like, I never want to do that again, right?
Yes.
They don't have the capacity, right? So that's,
Yes. And that's what totally. And that's kind of what I've seen, you know, to me, if it's 30 days of residential, you know, they're not in great shape. You know, their energy is pretty low. And if anything, usually experiencing quite a bit of post-acute withdrawal.
Yeah.
So to me, and then also I feel like whoever you start EMDR with, it'd be great if you could finish and then have months of this. It's not, I don't think it's a one and done or you know, I think it's a process that could go on for quite some time with, you know, somebody that you've gained the trust with. So those are just a little bit of a personal opinion on that. I'm just adding this in. This is a change of subject sort of, but along the lines of what you were doing is I loved what you said about the physical health threat of loneliness. And I hadn't heard that exactly that way before with the statistic, but I just saw it, and this is so unrelated but interesting. I just saw the Elvis movie, you know, and I feel like that is a part of what kind of happened to him there at the end, and you kind of got to see it, you know, on the big screen and understand it. But that was interesting. Thank you for bringing that up.
Actually, the part of the brain where we feel physical pain is also the same part of the brain where social pain is felt. So that's why when we feel loneliness or rejection and things, it is physically painful. It's activating the same part of our brain. So that's why I'm like, you know, this is like a warning sign to us that we need to connect or we need to move towards something, right? Because like with pain and different things, right, we move towards something, right? Like say it's like hunger, right? We're gonna eat something, or say it's like thirst, right? Like we have these like physical cues, right? And then we move towards something. The same is true with this. Like if we're feeling loneliness, it's a warning sign that we need to connect. So, and I think that that's like normal. So.
Did we lose her?
Well, I think that's about good timing because it's right up 1 o'clock. So thank you so much, Sarah. She's back, but that was a great presentation. And we appreciate your support, continuing support of the Spiritual Care Network. And we'll see you at some of the meetings coming up. And thank you, Kim, as always. You're a great co-host. And
thank you, Eric. Always fun.
Yeah, we look forward to other upcoming presentations in the next few months. So stay tuned, everybody, on our Facebook page and our website. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
See you around. Y'all take care. Happy Friday.
Thank you. Goodbye.